Hello, Garland here. And what's up with all of these Ukrainians invading Kursk stuff? Let's talk. Hello, Garland here. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Why? I'm sorry, I'm doing something real quick as we get going on my YouTube. Why? What's up with the Ukrainians invading Kursk? Is it is it some brilliant strategy? Is it some stupid strategy? Sorry, I'm doing something real quick. Gotta get everything. Okay, I'm good. Just making sure I was good on Rumble. I'm on Rumble. I'm on Rockfin. I'm on YouTube. So and I don't see Patty. But at any rate, everybody's there. Hello, you all. Okay, let's talk. Um. So what happened? A flock of Ukrainians, a large chunk of Ukrainians, snuck along the Russian border, and they crossed into Russia, and they're doing mayhem kind of things, right? Mostly, from what I've seen. Let's talk about what happened. They went into Russia. What kind of things are they doing? They're harassing various and sundry civilians. They're killing some civilians. Mostly it's civilian stuff, attacking civilian targets. This doesn't seem to be, quite frankly, I mean, obviously, this is not a military, this is not an operation that's designed to inflict military harm on the Russians. It's not an operation that is designed to further the military objectives of the Ukrainian conflict, the Ukrainian side. It's not like they said, hey, if we do this, this will give us a better chance to win. This will weaken the Russians in this area. This is, well, so when you look at it, here's what I would argue. It's not really a military operation. I mean, they're wandering every time. Everything I see is a bunch of you, either one of two things. They're kind of sitting ducks in Russian territory. So they're getting bombed, they're getting blown up, they're getting taken out, right? They've crossed into Russian territory. And now, quite frankly, I wouldn't want to be one of them because they're sitting ducks. They are in Russia's territory. Russia's shooting fish in a barrel. Don't get me wrong. They don't want it to be in their barrel, and they don't want them to be the Ukrainian, their adversary to be on Russian territory. But notwithstanding the infliction of pain on civilians and civilian targets, they're there now and they're getting killed in large numbers. They're there. I mean, that ain't the place to be. There ain't a whole lot of places to hide. You are in Russia. You have gone into the spider's lair to fight the spider. That ain't no way to fight a war, right? You go into the spider's lair without a clear military objective, without apparently clear military targets. There were some targets that seemed to be strategical on a broad sense. Maybe, oh, we'll take the Kursk nuclear power plant, but then what? What if you say we're going to take the Kursk nuclear power plants, and apparently there was some discussion that they could then somehow force the Russians to negotiate in order to get back the strategic power, the nuclear power plant. They would have to give up some of their turf. But even that, how well thought out is that? I mean, let's face it. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the Ukrainians made it to a nuclear power plant inside of Russia. Any nuclear power plant. They made it to a nuclear power plant inside of Russia. All right. And they took it and they were inside. And the Russians then surrounded the nuclear power plant and said, okay, come out. No. Well, at some point, you're going to run out of food, right? At some point, you're going to run out of supplies. So either you come out now, or we'll just wait and we'll go bring your skeletons out at some point. And what are you going to do? The soldiers in there, if it's just a suicide mission, well, we're going to stay in here till we die, or we're going to blow the plant and we'll die. Either way, the soldiers in there, they're on a suicide mission. And even if they blow the plant, what does that do? Does that win them the war? No. I don't, in looking at it, One thing's fairly obvious. Since you evaluate it and you can't find, uh, somebody says Trump is over, lucky if he doesn't go to prison. I don't even know what that means. And people just get in the chat, just say anything sometimes. But good. But look, you know what I say? Let me add this. When there's like people are like, there's provocateurs in the chat. I'm like, all of the numbers are good. Don't ixnay. Shh. Let the provoc. You know what would be great if we could get like 100,000 provocateurs, because I mean, just thinking of numbers we get, right? It would help the channel overall. So hey, there's an old saying that goes like, every man is my ally. Even the agent provocateurs are our allies. They're providing additional numbers. They're helping us with the algorithm. They're blowing up the channel. So thank you to the agent provocateurs in the house. Anyway, so when I look at it and I try to evaluate this through the context of a military objective for Ukraine, it just comes up bupkas. It comes up a bagel. It comes up zero. I can't find one. A strategic objective, could you argue, yes, they want to take a power plant or they want to take part of Russia? I mean, it's not, but even if they took the power plant, then what? They threaten to blow it? What do you think the Russians going to say? Okay, you can have all the regions back, just don't blow the power plant. No, the most they could do is blow a power plant, but I guess they could aim missiles at that anyway, but it wouldn't work out well for them. And who knows where that could go. Not that maybe they wouldn't, but I'm sure there are those in their alliance who would be really, really concerned about starting to go to blow nuclear power plants, to take nuclear action, because now you're pushing up against the Russians' doctrine for the use of nuclear weapons, and you're moving towards your own particular demise. So I think that I look at this not through the context of a military objective, a strategic operation. Let's look at it a different way. A couple different ways, I guess. One, the Ukrainians just hate Russians, right? Oh my God, they hate Russians. They're orcs, they're evil Russians. And certainly, I don't know if you've been paying attention, you kind of got the same thing in a lot of Europeans, right? They've been hiding it. They've been pretending, oh, we love minorities and LGBTQ and the oppressed people, and we don't believe in racism. We don't believe in any of the isms, ageism, sexism, homophobia, blah, blah, blah. What about Russianism? Oh yeah, we're off of that. We're off of that. It's like, it's another thing that exposes the ruling elite for who they really are, right? Oh, we're against racism, sexism, all that kind of stuff, except when it comes to the Palestinians. Except when it comes to the Russians, they're all a fraud. They're putting it on a little too thick. They're putting it on so thick that they expose who they really are. So I would say, number one, it's a bunch of people who hate Russians, and it's like throw a rock at a Russian. It's like a Russian rides by on a bicycle. Hey, there's a Russian. What do you want to do? Give me a rock. I'll throw a brick at him. No particular reason. It's not, you don't even know who that particular Russian person is, and it's not going to accomplish anything. It's just let's throw a brick at a Russian because I hate Russians. It's just a reaching out in anger and fury because I hate this particular ethnic group. I would argue that that's part of it. There are people like, how can we strike at the Russians? We hate the Russians. The Russians need to be struck at. Strike at those that we hate, right? And so that's part of it. Just emotional fury, throwing a rock at somebody, and an emotional fury, an anger, an explosion of racism, I guess is the word, against Russians. I think that's part of it. Another part of it is this. Also understanding that this is a facet of World War III. That World War III is here. And World War III is about the United States bringing its Nazi axis back together. This time adding the Tel Aviv contingent, right? And embarking upon their quest for global domination. So if you see the move in Kursk, not in the context of what's going on the front lines in Donbass, right? But what's going on, seeing it through the context of what's going on in Libya, where the U.S. is trying to get together in Libya, and they're trying to kind of open a new front against the Russians. They want a war, the civil war, to fire up in Libya. Lots of people die. They're all thrilled about that. Lots of innocent people slaughtered. And by the way, there's some oil there for them to steal. There's Russians there so they can start up a chaos and a world war, and they can attack Russian targets, or maybe, run the Russians out of Libya. We've got recently, one of the things that happened, I add this to it, in the Sahel region, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, etc. A bunch of ISIS types attacked some government troops that were in a convoy traveling with some Russian mercenaries, soldiers, whatever you want to call Wagner, right? And after the attack, the Ukrainians came out and bragged that, hey, we're international mercenaries for the U.S. empire, right? We were part of that. In other words, this isn't about Ukraine for us. We're not even fighting. The United States is fighting Russia and China, of course, all over the world. And we are cannon fodder, not just cannon fodder on the steppes of Ukraine. We're cannon fodder anywhere they need us to be. And let's face it, what's going on? Ukraine it has an army of kidnapping victims. I mean, literally, that's it, an army of kidnapping victims. So from the perspective of the oligarchs in Ukraine, the United States is flooding the country with billions of dollars. They get to spend it. And in return for getting all of this crooked money that nobody's going to ask anything about, except that they launder back into Europe to the ruling elite, not launder back into the U.S. to the ruling elite. Other than that, the only thing they have to do is sacrifice the working poor and the working class of Ukraine, sacrifice them for cannon fodder. You got to kidnap them. That's a lot of work. You know what I mean? People don't want to be kidnapped, for God's sake. How hard is that? You got to give them credit. They're struggling hard to kidnap the people of their country. A lot of work there. Grabbing them, you got to tie them up. You got to fight their families off. Of course, you got to, not train them. Then you got to give them a gun. You can't really give them any bullets until they get to the front line, because if you do, they might shoot you because they're kidnapping victims, right? Then when they get to the front line, of course, they don't want to fight. So you got to stand behind them and say, if you try to abandon your position and run, then we'll kill you, or we'll shell you with artillery or whatever. Okay, so it's a lot of work let's think about these poor oligarchs and the powerful people in Ukraine. What about them? It is a very difficult for these poor people to have to maintain an army full of kidnapping victims that they have to go out and kidnap. And then they got to keep them from running away until they can get them to the front line and they can get ripped to shreds by artillery. So they got a lot of work on their hands. Let's think about them for a change, right? But the bottom line is, the Ukraine is not a conflict. It's not a war about Ukraine. It has nothing to do with Ukraine. Ukraine is a battlefield. It's part of World War III. And World War III is the United States now has basically declared war on all countries who want independence and sovereignty. I said this before, way before even this conflict started, and that was the U.S. empire sees two kinds of countries. Countries that it has conquered and countries that it intends to conquer. And there's no other way in between. And now that the knuckle dragon apes are in charge, right? That the Cro-Magnon, broad foreheaded, drooling monkeys, and please forgive me, monkeys like Sullivan and Blinken and these guys are in charge. Now they're going to do what they're ready to do, which is, hey, can we go to war with anybody? Let's get all of the countries that don't want to do what we tell them to do, and we'll go to war with all of them at the same time. And we got plenty of cannon fodder in Ukraine. And now they're looking at, of course, Europe. How can we get the European cannon fodder? Come on. If you're in Europe, you got kids. You're in Europe, you got kids, sons and daughters. Hey, they don't want to be sexist. They want to send your sons and your daughters to die. They're not sexist people. If you got LGBTQ kids, send them to the battlefield too. So they are, non-discriminatory. They want to take all your kids and send them to die. And over here, of course, ours will be last, but they want to do the same thing. So what we've got is, in the view Kursk, through the context of a worldwide war where the U.S. and its kidnapping victims, let's face it, Europe is nothing but a kidnapping victim for the U.S. empire. Europe, the nations of Europe are no different than Ukraine overall, in that the U.S. has a bunch of oligarchs that peel a lot of money off and fill their own pockets and sacrifice their constituency, right? That's what the oligarchs are doing in Ukraine. I'm an oligarch in Ukraine. I'm going to get rich. My constituency is going to get kidnapped and sent to the front lines and die, right? What's Europe doing? The ruling elites getting richer and richer and richer, and what's happening to the people? They're being sacrificed mostly economically now. They're economic cannon fodder, but the ruling elite would just be happy to make them official kinetic cannon fodder if they get the opportunity. If their people are stupid enough to do it and they can get them to do it, they'll do that to them too. They're Germany, France, Belgium, they're Ukraine to the U.S. empire. They're Ukraine. They're all disposable and expendable assets, nothing more. And if you don't do what they tell you to do, you're a liability. That's all you are. Do what you're told. And when they tell you to die, when they tell you to give up your economy, give up everything, you do it. You shut up. And then off you go to the front. So through that lens, what's happening in Kursk is nothing but part of a bigger plan. You know, one of the things that we've seen, a lot of people don't know about this, the Belt and Road Initiative that China has, which is all over the world. In Pakistan, one of the things that kept happening is there were meant to be Chinese workers, Chinese engineers, et cetera, Chinese people working on some various projects. And terrorists, totally and completely unrelated to the United States, in the same way that the ISIS terrorists in the Sahel region that attacked the government forces and Wagner were completely and totally unrelated to the U.S., in the same way that the ISIS forces that attack Iran, the ISIS forces that carried out the Kursk, the Crocus attack, that for some reason these ISIS forces that the United States is fighting to stop always seem to attack the U.S.'s adversaries. I'm waiting for them to attack in Venezuela and Nicaragua and Cuba next, right? So China has dealt with that. China had in Pakistan, they had a bus bomb. They had several different attacks on Chinese projects, Belt and Road projects in Pakistan. And what was that? That was the U.S. empire. That was the intelligence operation saying, how can we attack the Chinese on an alternate playing field? Rather than fight them, you know, have to go to China and fight them or fight them in Asia. Let's go around the world, see what they're doing. And we can pursue this world war that we are pushing, that the Biden administration, that the neocons are pushing. And that's all Kursk is. It's part of the attacks in the Sahel. It's part of the attacks in Libya. It's part of some other things that are going on in the Middle East, the attacks in Pakistan on China's interests, etc., the overthrow of whatever, Myanmar, you name it. All of these are part of the same battle. And I think Russia and China understands it. And the question is, in the same way that people are saying, will the conflict in the Middle East expand? Will the conflict in Ukraine expand? Well, if you see them all as one conflict, they don't have to expand. Who is the common oppressor? Who is the common diabolical schemer? Who's paying for the bombs in Israel? Who's supplying for and paying for the bombs in Ukraine? Who's supplying and paying for and training and equipping and arming the ISIS terrorists in Pakistan and wherever the hell? All of the same evil regime, the Biden regime, the neocons, the U.S. State Department, the same people. So if you have attacks in Pakistan on Chinese interests, attacks in Venezuela, they've had issues with terrorism, right? Bolivia terrorism, Cuba terrorism. If you have attacks all over the world, and all of these attacks are instigated by, funded by the same entity, well, then these are not individual attacks. All of these, bottom line is this: the conflict between the U.S. empire and all potential independent and sovereign nations is worldwide. The U.S. is pursuing it worldwide. The neocons are pursuing it worldwide. They're pursuing it everywhere. They're going after their enemies wherever they are, their adversaries wherever they are. Now, it's not well thought out. They don't have they don't have not only a good plan, they don't have a plan. If you look at what's happening in Kursk, it's a perfect metaphorical example of this war. What's happening? Okay, we can get in there, right? We can get into Kursk. Okay. And then we can kill some Russians and do some things there that will be aggravating to the Russians. Okay. And if you ask yourself, and then what? Then ain't nothing happen. And then what? There ain't no and then what. But in reality, do they need an and then what? I mean, they ain't losing no troops. I mean, they got a bunch of cannon fodder kidnap victims. They don't need it. And what's going to happen? Well, we're going to send the cannon fodder and kidnap victims into Kursk and kill some Russians and aggravate the crap out of Russians. Then what? I don't understand the question. How are you going to get them out? Get them out. I don't understand the question. They know getting them out. There ain't no then what. It's kind of a very Zen attack if you think about it, right? The object of life is life, right? Why? Why do we do these things? The object, the reason that we do these things is that we do these things. That's good enough. We don't need a stated reason. If you look out and you see a tree growing, what is the purpose of that tree? What is the purpose of that tree? Purpose is a word. There is no purpose. The tree doesn't need a purpose to exist. It's not trying to do something. It doesn't have to do something. It is a tree, and it's not even a tree. We call it a tree. We use the sound tree to describe that. So there is no purpose, and a purpose isn't necessary. Now, don't get me wrong. I can push back against what I can push back against that with the book. Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, right? And say we all need meaning, that we live better in life. If we have a meaning, we have to feel that we're part of something bigger, and therefore we can, move and be satisfied that we're accomplishing something. And here's what I would argue. If you believe that is true, and if you don't, it ain't. Okay. So what if the attack in Kursk was they were going to try to do some things while they were doing this attack? But it didn't really need a purpose. Attacking Russia inside of Russia was good enough. Killing some innocent civilian Russians was good enough. Blowing up some town halls, maybe a movie theater or two, a delicatessen, things like that, a liquor store. Blowing those things up in and of themselves were good enough. Well, why do you think they did it, Garland? Why did we have to ask that question? They did it. They did it. They didn't ask the question why. They did it. And that was why they did it, to do it. Because they could do it. Hey, I'll put it to you like this. It's like the sociopath, right? I've told the story, and for those of you who have heard it before, forgive me. For my law enforcement days, 2 guys in a car. One guy cashes his check. He takes $500. He puts it in the glove compartment. He goes in the store. He comes back. His cousin's sitting beside him in the car. The money's gone. He asked his cousin because he doesn't know anything. Now, he just let that, nobody in the car but him and his cousin. He put the car in the glove compartment. He goes in, he gets a drink or whatever, soda or something, comes out. The money's gone. Nobody could have possibly taken it but his cousin. But his cousin doesn't know anything. Law enforcement eventually comes, talks to his cousin. Hey, look, man, everybody knows what time it is, bruh. Just give the man his money back. And he says, look, I don't want to prosecute my cousin. I just give me my money back. My cousin can go on about his own business. All right, cousin, give him his money and walk. I don't know what you're talking about. You took his money. Give him his money back. His money took it, not me. I have no idea what happened to that money. Then you wouldn't mind if we search you, huh? No, go right ahead. And money's in his sock. He goes to jail, where all he had to do was give the money back and walk away. Now, what happened when his cousin walked in and he knew there was in the store? He knew there was $500 in there, right? Did he have a plan? No. Did he think past the what's going to happen? Well, you and I would have thought like this: my cousin's coming back in, and at some point, not long from now, he'll come back and he'll know that I took the money because there's nowhere else for it to go because I'm the only person in here, stuck in here right in front of my face, not 2 minutes ago. I'd have to say that somebody from 7-Eleven came out, but there's cameras all over the parking lot, so that wouldn't work well, would it? No. Why? His cousin didn't think through that. Here's what he thought. Oh, man, he went in. He put $500 in there. I want that 500. I can get the 500. He reaches in. He wanted it, and it's there, and he can get it. He takes it. He puts it in his pocket. Man, I got $500. Now, at the time, being a sociopath, he didn't stop to think of the future, what was going to happen, it's there right now. I can get it. I'm going to take it. And there, I got it. Now, anything that happens in the future, since he didn't think about it, he'll cross that bridge when he comes to it. Didn't stop to think. He doesn't even stop to think far enough that when I say to the guy, well, how about if I search you? He doesn't stop long enough to think, when he's going to search me and the money's in my sock. He didn't think that far ahead. He didn't think seconds ahead, minutes ahead. It was, I want this, it's in front of me and I can get it, right? That's how a sociopath thinks. Well, there's the Kursk region. That's part of Russia. We can get in it. We can get troops in there. We can attack Russia. Nobody in the room said, and then what? Nobody in that room would say, well, what would it be our strategic vision? I mean, okay, yeah, we can attack Russia, but what then? No, we can attack Russia. Look, we can put people around. They don't have people over there. 1,000 troops here, 4,000 troops. Then we can bring up some columns of armor. We can do this. Then we can go in. We can approach from this way. We can attack, and we can do this. We can blow up this. We can go here. We can do this. Blah 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 blah. Nobody said, and then what? And what is the ultimate outcome that we're gunning for here? There, sport. Nobody's going to say that. I can do it. That's how sociopath thinks. I can do it. It's right. That money's right in front of me, and I can get it, man. What am I gonna wait around for longer? I'm taking that money. Boom, I got it. What are you gonna do when you have to, when the chickens come home to roost? I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. That's all this is. The Russians, I think, figured that out. They looked and they said, yeah, they found some weaknesses. They found where we didn't have enough people, and we didn't think they'd be stupid enough to commit suicide. Well, because the people that are committing suicide, it's their job to commit suicide. That's why they were kidnapped. They were kidnapped to be used as kamikaze soldiers. That's what Ukraine has, a kamikaze army. Their job is to die. Kind of like the old Cheech and Chong, right, movie, where they're, with the kamikazes. I don't know if anybody ever heard the old Cheech and Chong bit with the kamikaze pilots, but anyway, that's the bottom line. You're going to go there and you're going to kill yourself. You're going to attack this Yankee aircraft carrier, killing yourself and everyone aboard. Right? That's the plan. That's the plan. You don't kidnap people to send them back home alive. They'll talk if you send them back home alive. If they go back home alive, they can potentially say, well, I was kidnapped on the streets of Kiev. They took me in. They beat me. I got no training. And then they said to me, you're going to fight. If you try to go back, we'll kill you. You can't let that man back alive. He'll talk. He'll try to escape. He'll get to the West. What happens one day when the war is over? He'll talk. He is a liability. He is a potential problem. So he was not kidnapped to return from the battlefield. He was kidnapped to die in service to the empire and gloriously die. Well, ingloriously, he will die in service to the empire. And now you got a bunch of Ukrainian soldiers who are sitting ducks. Think about this. How you think their supply lines are looking right about now, right? They've come into Russia. They had a plan to get into Russia. I don't think they got much of a plan of getting out of Russia. And remember, if you have an army moving, okay, think about this. I've heard 10, 15,000 men. So let's go with 10,000 men. Let me ask you a question. How much food does 10,000 men use? How much ammunition does 10,000 men shoot up? How much water does 10,000 men drink? Right? You got to have tanker trucks full of water and sources for water. You got to have tanks and trucks full of food for these people, all kinds of things they'll need. I mean, think about this. The soldiers, can you imagine what these guys smell like? They are now in Russia. They for what, 6, 7, 8 days, 10 days, however many days it is, right? They haven't had a bath, haven't had a shower. Most of them, I read this thing where a bunch of Ukrainian soldiers, and they were saying we haven't had food or water in several days. I mean, you got 10,000 people. That's a lot of food and water. That's a lot of supplies and toilet paper and fresh underwear and socks. What do you think you would feel like in the summer, where it's kind of warm, and you see what they got on, those heavy green uniforms, flak vests, they're sweating like hell. They're eating and drinking as best they can. They're going to the bathroom. What do you think those guys smell like now? And what are they doing? They're out in the woods trying to survive, trying to sleep, trying to run from the Russians, trying to hide artillery stuff. Those guys are hungry. They're thirsty. They smell like hell. Their lives are a living absolute hell. And they're in Russia and they can't get out alive. You know Russia's watching the border. You know Russia's got drones everywhere, artillery everywhere. They're killing everything that don't move. And that's their job. That's why these people are here. Their job is not to capture something and hold it. But they'll talk about it. Yes, they were supposed to go there and dig in and capture this area and leave. Yeah, right. I don't even think the frauds that sent them in really believed that. It was, we'll send these people in and they'll embarrass Russia, right? It was part of that, the PR operation. Russia will be embarrassed that this happened. And that will be very disruptive to Russia. Let me ask you this. And what about the Ukrainian soldiers that are embarrassing Russia? How are things going to work out for them? Not so good, huh? So they sent in 10,000 pieces of, we're just using that term, could be more, could be less, 10,000 pieces of cannon fodder on a PR operation to embarrass the Russians, whatever that means. I don't know if you figured this out. I've been reading a bit about Russian history. Russians take a punch pretty good. If you're in a fight, man, you got to be able to take a punch. You're in a fight. Don't think you're going to get in a fight. You're going to learn how to get in a squabble with somebody and you ain't never going to get hit. A person who is very good at self-defense, very good at fighting, understands two things. Number one, you have to be trained fighter. Number two, a lot of it is up here. How do I keep from getting in a fight? And if I get in a fight, I know at that point it's life and death. And I know I got to keep going. If I get a broken arm, if I lose an eye, literally lose an eye, somebody pokes your eye and your eye hangs out, right? What are you going to do? You're just going to lay there and wait to die? They know you got to fight through anything until you're dead. If you're not dead, you keep fighting. You fight through, fight through, fight through. That's what people understand. That's a tough guy. That's a tough fight. As they say, you've heard people say this, I'm a tough out. That means I'm a tough fight. Well, these things to embarrass Russia. Well, last time I checked, the Nazis killed like 30 million Russians. The Russians weren't embarrassed. They were facing genocidal biblical numbers of deaths of their civilians and military personnel. What'd they do? You think they get a white flag? Did they throw in the towel or whatever? No, their backs are against the wall. The Russians believe that when they're attacked by the West, that the West, they believe this, they'll annihilate all of us if they get a chance. And they're probably right. Basically, all you got to do is look at Israel. You think they won't annihilate all of them? Yes, they will. They'll annihilate all of us. They'll annihilate all of them. They'll kill us all. They can care. Their own people. Look, first of all, if you look at what the Ukrainians and the West are doing to Ukrainians, and they're supposed to be on their side, they're taking literally genocidal offensive actions against Russia. I've watched where the Russians had these gigantic lines built up with tank traps and all kinds of bombs and mines and everything. And the Ukrainians would send like a dozen Strikers or Bradleys or something into the minefield, like they were really going to make it through to the other side. No, they weren't. They'd go into the minefield and they were all going to die, except the ones that try to make it back. And, then they'll just put you on another one and send you back out. You die. Your job is to die. They don't give a crap about you dying. That's your job. So this is about taking a swipe at the Russians at the expense of the kidnapping victims. And it won't be the last. And I think the Russians realize it. It's also this. I get in a fight and you attack me. I understand I might have to take some shots, but I understand in the end, you're attacking me. One of us is walking away and one of us ain't. My aim is that it's going to be me. That's simply, well, I walk away, lose the fight. What happened, Garland? Well, I ended up with a broken hand. I ended up with cut and scratches. I ended up with Band-Aids. I'm putting a tourniquet on my left arm because I've been stabbed in the arm, all of this kind of stuff. But that bastard there's dead. He ain't putting a tourniquet on nothing. He's not trying to put a splint on his right leg. He's not trying to do anything. He's going to the cemetery. One of us had to go, and I knew I was going to be massively injured, but I was going to fight until I couldn't fight no more, right? That's it. That's the mentality of a person who's trained to defend himself. That's the mentality of Russia. So the idea think about this, the idea that you're going to embarrass or exact some kind of a psychological damaging, psychologically damning attack on someone who's fighting to the death. Hey, we'll do this. Why? This guy's fighting to the death. You're like, watch this. I'm going to get him. Hey, your shoes are ugly and you need a haircut. That guy's fighting to the death. He's going to be like, yeah, okay, whatever. All right, let's finish this fight to the death. It's his clothing, the matching of his clothing, having the proper accoutrements for his outfit is not at the top of his list. Right now, he feels that his life is being threatened and he's going to fight you to the death. And you insulting his clothing line ain't gonna bother him. That's the easy part. He's willing to get knifed. He's willing to get punched, hit with things, bricks thrown at him, bitten, you name it. Whatever you got to do. But that guy's planning on coming out of there alive. Okay, that's Russia. Russia's not easily, their feathers aren't easily ruffled. They understand that a fight's a fight, and they get in a fight, it's going to be a nasty one. But they aim to come out the other end, and not you or whoever you send them. And I think they understand that they're going to be fighting for a while. I do also think they understand the context of the fight. I think the Russians are working. That's why. Look, think about this. One of the reasons that the Russians are, they signed this deal with North Korea because they understood that this conflict, that there's an Asian aspect of the U.S. Worldwide war on sovereignty and independence of all nations. They understand now. What are they? Are they in Africa? Yes. Are they starting to really supply the Sahel regions with military hardware and training and different things of that nature? Yes. Why? Because they understand that there's an African aspect of it. Are they in the Middle East getting S-400s to Iran and various defensive things to help Iran be able to protect itself? Yes, because they understand that there's a Middle Eastern aspect of this international war on independence and sovereignty by the neocons. So I think what you've seen from the Russians in recent time is the recognition that this is a broad-based conflict, that they are being singled out because of their ability, because number one, they have very, very valuable natural resources. And the West wants that. The U.S. empire wants that because they were a powerful part of an alliance, the BRICS alliance, the China alliance, the Iranian and the Venezuelan alliance. They're a truly powerful part of that alliance. And the U.S. wants to weaken the alliance and going through Russia. So Russia realized that while they are a very, very important part of the alliance for independence and sovereignty that the neocons are going after, they are not the only part of it. So I think they're working on building around the world, building up their alliances and building up the strength of those who are in the alliance who may have a desire to fight if necessary, a desire to protect themselves, but don't have necessarily the military wherewithal to do it. I think the Russians are with them on that and trying to strengthen them, understanding that they got to help these people, that by helping the Africans hold off the imperialists, they're helping themselves. By helping North Korea hold off the imperialists, they're helping themselves. And I think China is doing it more quietly. China's doing it in that they are helping, very much helping to strengthen the Russian economy so that Russia, as kind of an economic proxy for China, can arm, train, etc. The alliance of those two states, the BRICS alliance, shall we call it. I think that the time is coming now, based on what's happening around the border of India, and based on the fact that the United States really is starting to press India, has made a decision that India is a little too independent and sovereign, and that they got to go after them. I think that you'll see the likelihood to me is that the Indians will recognize that they are in the crosshairs of the imperialists. I think the Indians will, if they're smart, and the Indians are very smart, I think they will realize that their strength is in the BRICS alliance, and their only hope for sovereignty is going to be, it's getting to a point you're going to have to choose. and they're going to choose the BRICS alliance. I think India realizes that. The U.S. tried to tell them what to do, and India said no, to yank on their chain a little bit, and India said no. India is a regional power, if not a world power. India was far too strong for the United States to just yank their chain around. Too many people there. They couldn't really do it wasn't feasible to do a color revolution, so instead they're starting to, screw around India's border and cause chaos and unrest, right? And I think this will be something that wakes the Indians up uh, to the reality that it's either, you're either going to be food for the empire. Either they're going to chew you to shreds, tear you up, and take all your stuff, or you're going to have to join the opposition, who's fighting to be free from U.S. imperial machinations. I think the Indians have no choice but to come to that. They're going to have to take a position sooner or later, and I think it's getting obvious there is only one position for them to take. So I think that's the direction that's going. I think that the Kursk thing here be interesting to see where we are in a couple weeks as that starts to fizzle out. Because one of the things I think that will be obvious to the people in Ukraine is that it was, in fact, that it was bad for Ukraine in every way, shape, or form, that it cost them a lot of men and women, apparently, that it cost them a lot of equipment, and that I think there will be those who militarily are wedded to the idea that Ukraine should be fighting Russia will say, well, this was not good. I mean, this was counterproductive for our war against Russia. And maybe or likely that'll start waking them up to they're not involved in a Ukrainian war against Russia, that they are mercenaries, whether they be in Africa or on the steppes of Ukraine, that the Ukrainian cannon fodder troops are nothing but mercenaries for U.S. imperialism. And I think that this particular thing will help wake up some of the people in Ukraine. I think it's, Ukraine, it was a matter of time, really, before Ukraine started getting closer and closer to some kind of an internal conflict, internal civil war. I think the people in Ukraine are starting to understand, the women, the mothers, the daughters, the sisters are starting to realize that when these goons come take your young husband, father, brother, son, whatever away, you ain't seeing him no more. It's over. That when the goons come get him, he's dead. Say have his funeral before he leaves. Once the goons get his hand on him, you never see him again. And that's the plan. That's what the goons are taking him for. That's the plan, and that they have a reckless disregard for the lives of their soldiers. Total reckless disregard. I mean, you're going to send your soldier into a battle that not only can he not win, he can't possibly win. Not only can he not possibly win, he can't possibly survive. Knowing that, you're going to send him in anyway to embarrass the Russians. Can you imagine that? Hey, Garland, here's the plan. You're going to run across that hill, and they're going to machine gun you. Really? What's the why? Why is that? Well, we think that it might embarrass the Russians. And so what if the Russians are embarrassed? We haven't figured that out yet. But get to running, scoot along there, sporty, right over that hill. We figure maybe 50 to 100 yards out, you'll be cut down by machine gun fire. If that doesn't happen, then you get to the minefield. And trust me, that ain't going to be no fun. Now, if you make it through the minefield, on the other side of that, there's a bunch of Akhmat soldiers, and they tend to just like take their knives out and probably just poke you like a pincushion. They'll bleed you out nice and slow. Anyway, whatever the case may be, we figure you got about 150 yards max. You're done. See ya. Have a nice day. Good luck embarrassing the Russians. That's basically what it is. And I'd be like, I don't want to do that. Oh, okay. If you don't, we're going to machine gun you anyway. And I'd be like, I thought you were on my side. No. We're working for the Americans. We're pilfering the loot. And the reason they're paying us is for people like you to die like that. Get moving. There's a minefield waiting for you. Those mines just ain't going to blow themselves up, buddy. Somebody's got to step on them. Doodles. That's kind of where the Ukrainians fall. That's why it's obvious that at some point, I'll put it like this. In the same way, here's something that's odd. In the same way that the Israelis can't really get out of this war that they're in, right? And if Netanyahu gets out of this thing, he goes to jail, right? Because let's face it, he's a friggin' criminal, and jail's a proper place for him. But not only that, if this thing ends, then people will start examining this mess. If this thing ends, people will start looking and asking questions. Some of the soldiers that were there, I mean, that were in Gaza, will now be out, and some of them are going to be like, I don't feel right about what we did in Gaza. Let me tell you about some of the things that happened. And I don't think we shouldn't have done that. These things were wrong. And I couldn't say it while we were in Gaza because they just shot me. So you got some soldiers that are whose consciences are going to bug them, and they're going to talk. You're going to have some victims who were beaten and shot and all these other terrible things that happened with Israel that are going to come out with their stories, with their books, with their interviews, etc. That's going to come out. All kinds of insider information will come out. So the Israelis can't really stop this thing, because if they do, not only does Netanyahu go to jail, but there will be sunlight. There will be some level of transparency. Some people will talk. The world will start examining that thing more closely. And people, if they ain't outraged now, they will be really, even more outraged as the truth comes out. Well, there's a similar problem with Ukraine. Once this happens, what happens when all these guys come back from the front? And you say, what happened? And they say, my God, you're not going to believe it. Well, I was kidnapped and they dragged me. I was beaten. I saw them execute prisoners. I saw them shoot our own guys in the head. I saw them say, go to charge the Russians. And some of our guys says, but there's 10,000 Russians there. There's only 5 of us will be killed. And so they just mowed our own guys down with machine guns and said to the next group, now you go, or we're going to mow you down with machine guns. And we knew that it was either get mowed down by machine guns with the Russians or get mowed down by machine guns by our own guys. Those are the kind of stories that are coming. What about people that come out and talk about money? What happened? Well, the Americans knew that I was pilfering millions, but they came to me and they said, look, how much are you pilfering? About $1 million a week. Can you drop it down to 950,000? Yeah, okay, good. Keep going. As long as, and can you share some with the DNC? I mean, hey, we're trying to get elected here. All right, here's $500,000. Okay, great. Have a nice day. These kind of stories are coming out. So here's the problem. If the war stops, they're coming out. They can't end the wars. They can't, because too much truth will come out. They also, you'll have people come out that say, look, I could be prosecuted. I'll talk to keep from being prosecuted. You'll have people that will say, look, Russia's now in Ukraine and they're everywhere and they're trying to get certain people. I'll tell you what I'll do, Russia. I did my dirt and I was wrong. Yes, I did all kind of things. And Russians, you guys, please don't turn me over to the Donetsk People's Republic. Please don't take me out and hang me like the dog that I am. Tell you what I'll do. I'll provide some info if you promise not to hang me. You'll have some people that have stolen money. Hey, look, you know what? The Americans allowed me to take $20 million. I'll tell you what I'll do. If you let me keep half of it, I'll tell you everything you need to know. Oh, by the way, I recorded everything when I talked to Jake Sullivan, when I talked to Tony Blinken, etc. I recorded that stuff. I'll give you the recordings if you let me keep half the money and don't shoot me and hang me. That's the kind of things that are bound to happen. Therefore, they can't end this thing like any kind of way. They can't walk away any kind of way. They got to keep it going. And might I add, in a way, here's what I think. I think that if Trump gets in, he aims to end the Ukraine conflict. I don't know if he can. He aims to. But in a way, the people in power can't really let him do that. So I think in a way, as clear as it is that they're just cooking the books when it comes to the polls, that Kamala Harris is about as sharp as a furry marble. There's no substance to her. I still think that if it's a fair election, my prediction, because of the economic plight that most people find themselves in, that if it's a fair election, I think Trump probably wins. I'm not saying it, probably vote for Jill Stein, whatever, but I'm just saying, from my perspective, just as an analyst, Trump probably wins. And I think Trump wants to end the Ukraine conflict. And here's the truth. People are like, well, he can't end it. Well, you know what? If he ain't going to get to send money, if he's not going to sign off on money, if they're not going to send the stuff over they need, if they're not going to get the support, here's bottom line: if Trump and Vance do not support this war, and they come in office and they're saying we don't want it to go on, we don't support it, we're not in favor of it, we're not behind it, it is hard for the Russians. I mean, for the Russians, it is nigh impossible for the Europeans to keep it going if Trump and Vance don't want it to keep going. And if that happens, then the whole World War III global war kind of collapses, doesn't it? If that happens, if they were able to pull the rug under out, because remember what it was. The foundation of this World War III global war thing is weaken Russia first, or China, or whatever. You got to weaken one of the superpowers. We got two unbelievably powerful entities, and together it's an insurmountable power. So we've got to weaken one of them first, if not completely take one of them. And they chose Russia because they saw Russia as the lesser of the two powers. Economically, they're speaking, yeah, militarily, new, very powerful militarily, right? And growing. And so they went after Russia and strengthened Russia. But if Trump and Vance were able to snatch the rug out of the Ukraine, then this concept of weakening one of the superpowers before going after the other completely collapses. And the whole global war on everything, on the independence and sovereignty of all nations, don't work real well if Russia is back on the scene and angry, tanned, rested, and ready. Right? Because now what's going to happen? Okay, well, we're going to go after China. Well, now Russia's ready and raring to go. And Russia is still kicking out military, hypersonic missiles, all kind of crap. And they're arming their allies, such as North Korea, to the teeth. To the teeth. And now it's going to get real dangerous in the Asian Pacific if you want to go up against China. Because not only do you have China, you got North Korea, and likely probably Russia too. And now you got to fight everybody in one arena, 8,000, 7,000. Look, think about this. The U.S. having to fight China, Russia, and North Korea 7,000 miles from its shores on the Pacific. But on the doorstep, Russia has a Pacific coast, on the doorstep of Russia and China and North Korea. So you got to go 7,000 miles and you got to fight on their doorstep. And you got to drag Japan and South Korea into that, and Australia. And the people there ain't really going to want a slice of that pie because, number one, it wipes out their economy because China's their number one trading partner. So what you're going to say is you got to go to war with your number one trading partner and wipe your economy out for all times. There ain't no coming back. Your economy's gone. There is no coming back. So realistically, as these idiots just, throw rocks at Russia and it bounces off Russia's back. I mean, Russia's, they're taking a hit here, a lump there on the head, a scratch here, what have you. But Kursk thing is a bit of an embarrassment to Russia, but militarily speaking, strategically speaking, it ain't all that much. And you are also taking some of the reserves that could have been used, a significant number of the reserves that could have been used to fortify positions along the contact line and all kinds of equipment and all kinds of things like that. And you're just throwing it in the trash. So ultimately what you're doing is you're sacrificing your ability to defend the positions that you hold in Ukraine. You're making the collapse of Ukraine even faster. And you're making it even more clear than ever to the Ukrainians that they're nothing but mercenary cannon fodder for the Russians. So that's where we are. It's a worldwide thing. The discussion about whether or not the Middle East conflict is going to spread, it's already spread. How the spread will manifest itself is a question, but it's already spread. Look, hasn't Israel attacked Syria? Hasn't Israel attacked Yemen? Hasn't Israel attacked Lebanon? Hasn't Israel attacked Iran? Israel's attacked pretty much everybody in the region. So, I mean, it's not that these countries are all at war. It's that Israel's at war with all these other countries. It's punching and bombing everybody it can everywhere. Now, what's interesting is that the Russians have put in a lot of defensive stuff in Iran. I find that interesting. The Russians have put in a lot of the S-400s, which is no joke. And what that says is this: do you really want to send planes with S-400s around? Do you really want to send fighter planes to attack Iran with S-400s in? Man, those things are nasty. And they fire hypersonic missiles. They have an extremely long range, ability to attack planes. They attack aerial targets. Additionally, you've got significant electronic warfare assets, which now means when you fire missiles and things, smart bombs, whatever the hell you're firing into Iran to attack Iran, they're going to have difficulty because their signals are going to be disrupted. Their signals are going to be jammed. Their GPSs are going to be jammed. It's going to be really hard. It ain't going to be an easy task at all to attack Iran. Iran already had a significant integrated air defense system. So it already wasn't an easy, and not an easy out, right? There's no easy out. You get in there, you're firing missiles or something from a distance, but if you get near them, you could be in deep and serious trouble, right? And now they're bringing in S-400s and electronic warfare. Now you come flying your plane in and it's flying blind and it's being targeted by S-400s. I don't know how much you know about, because the S-400 is the S-300, the upgraded version. I think they called it the SPMU something or other, right? But bottom line is, it is a nasty, nasty air defense weapon with extremely long range, firing deadly hypersonic missiles at your plane. If that S-400 locks onto you, you better hit your ejector seat. That's your only hope, is to hit your ejector seat, because you ain't getting out of that one alive. Not going to happen. So now the Israelis, if they say, well, we're going to attack some targets in Iran, do you really want to send some squadrons of planes into Iran? Imagine the humiliation if Israel said, we're going to send X amount of squadrons of planes, in the U.S. or whoever, right? We're going to send a bunch of squadrons of planes into Iran to attack Iran. Them S-400s lock onto them. They ain't coming out of there. They ain't going far in. It's considered an area denial weapon. It's an area denial. You can't fly a plane anywhere near that damn thing, or you're going to lose lots of planes. And of course, it is again part of an integrated air defense network. So now you have various and sundry other, the smaller things, the Books, the various and smaller other air defense weapons, and it connects to the S-400s and the S-4s. Then it connects to the satellites, and now you've got computers as planes or missiles come in, looking at the targets, prioritizing the targets. An S-400 here, a Buk here, this there, that there, and this one fires. This one's closer. This one's lower. This one, and it's choosing the targets, and it's sending the targets out to the various systems to attack, or defend against. It just means this: if you decide you're going after Iran, if you're like, ha, 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 now we got our chance to attack Iran, you don't know how it's going to turn out. And S-400 can attack land targets. I don't know if you know that. It can attack land targets. So the Russians, when they, and let me add this, you don't know what all they're putting in there. The S-400s, I think the Murmansk, I think that's what it's called, the is it the Murmansk, the electronic warfare system? Yes. Yeah, it's the Murmansk B, an electronic warfare system. It performs radio reconnaissance, interception of enemy signals, suppression of enemy signals, up to 5,000 kilometers. It says the Merman. This is the Global Defense News. Electronic warfare Murmansk being is capable of stunning the territories of the EU countries closest to the Russian border, disrupting military communications, leaving civilians without mobile communications. So they got a lot of things. They've got stuff that can neutralize low orbit spy satellites, ground-based radars, airborne radars that ranges up to 300 kilometers, right? So they got a lot of stuff. I'm not saying that the U.S. or Israel wouldn't be able to do something and wouldn't be able to have successful attacks, but I'm just saying they'd have to think twice about it. You know what I mean? Because it would be costly, and it'd be wouldn't be smart to send planes in. Wouldn't be smart to do that at all, because now you're facing not just peer competitors, but some of the electronic systems that the Russian has is more advanced than anything the West has. So is that you're taking a chance that you're going to go in and attack somebody, you will get your butt kicked. Imagine this: if the Israelis say yes, oh, we're going to fight back against Iran. Let's say Iran punches Israel, and Israel says we're going to fight back. How? We're going to send X amount of planes, squadrons of planes, this and that, blah blah blah, in to attack targets, and every single one of them gets vaporized, hits the ground, and Iran looks at them and says, "Is that the best you could do?" So I say all that to say this. I didn't want to get too far from Kursk, but I think I had to at least ensure that I discussed the Kursk operation in the context of the global, what they remember before this, the US empire's term was the global war on terror. And we used to say it's a global war of terror, right? The context was a global war. The context was the US has the right and the might to militarily act all over the globe. Global war on terror, right? We got the right, the might, we got the right, we got the moral authority. Nobody can stop us from doing it. We're going to make sure that everybody in the world does that what we say to do, right? That was that. Well, this is the same thing. It is the same global war on terror, but just change it a little bit. It's the global war on independence and sovereignty. That's what it is. It's a global war on sovereignty. It's a global war of aggression. And Russia was the first major country that was visited by the adjustment. I'll put it like this: when they ended the the Afghanistan conflict, that's the end of the global war on terror. But very shortly after, what happened? The beginning of the global war on sovereignty and independence, the global final war where we're taking it all. We're going to have it all. As they said in what was the show, New Jack City, we're going to take the corridor, right? We're going to take everything. And that was the beginning of that. And that's all this is. And I think Russia knows it. I think Russia knows it's nothing personal, Russia. It's not just you. Sure, we hate Russians, but we want the whole world. And you're kind of in the way of that. So we got to make a move. And I think Russia's smart enough to understand that. The American people, well, let's face it, a big part of that global war on independence and sovereignty was complete and total brainwashing of the American people using lies and propaganda. And based on some of the people that I've talked to recently, they've been pretty successful with some of these friggin' idiots, but that still ain't going to do them no good. So at any rate, thanks a lot, everybody. Let me look and see if we're going to search for super chats. And any super chats in here, we are going, ain't many, but if we slump into one. Oh, here we go. Edward Bernays, the father of propaganda, says it's worse than we think. The fact that the West's objective is to balkanize Russia to exploit its natural resources is the indicator that the West is at the brink of resources and industrial collapse. Good point, man. That's brilliant. I love the people in my chat, man. That is brilliant. I'll have to remember that one, brother. Zach Boyle says, say what you will about Green Party, fascist, totalitarian, dim light, and unlife cut, all true. But hey, they have kind Gaza messaging branch Covidians. There you go. Thanks a lot. All right, Zach Boyles, thank you. Oh, Ivan B. Thanks a lot, Ivan. Let's look over at Rockfin. Okay. Timothy Taylor. Thanks a lot, Timothy Taylor. Certainly appreciate that. Now, I'm going to try something that I don't often do. We're going to go to Rumble. And I'm going to check out my Rumble rants. Oh, here we go. See if we got some rumble rants. No rumble rants. Good morning from Newcastle. Cheech and Chong did great documentaries. Battle of Kursk Operation Mark II for German tanks back on Russian soil, but they're probably on fire. Unfortunately, history repeats for the German government. And stop all wars immediately right now. Thank you very much. Anything else from my dear friends? The last was Ivan B. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Certainly appreciate everybody taking time out of their evening to hang out with me. Um, do me a favor if you can. You see everything going by under the bottom. Buy me a coffee, PayPal, Patreon. If you can afford to do any of that stuff, certainly appreciate it. Follow me on Telegram. Follow me on farce book, whatever the case may be, fascist book. But most importantly, share this on all your social media platforms. Please share this on all your social media platforms. Thanks a lot, everybody. I am kind of tired for some reason tonight. I'm out.